Hello, everyone, and welcome. Good morning and good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. My name is Katerina Pick, and I'm interim dean and professor at the Drucker School of Management. And I'm really delighted to welcome you to our second event in this speaker series called The Drucker Difference and Your Family Business. This is part of the work that we're doing at the Drucker School Global Family Business Institute to, provide practical resources, academic content, but also a supportive network to leaders in family business. And our mission is really to help family business leaders solve the unique challenges you face, and also to facilitate knowledge sharing, right, among all the kinds of people and organizations that touch family business in some way. So I want to welcome you to what I hope you will find to be a very useful and interesting discussion. We like to have this be, conversational because we know that that's how people, really kind of learn the most from this material. We are able to put on this speaker series because of the generous support of the Woody and Gail Hunt Family Foundation. So for over 30 years, the Hunt Foundation has made tremendous impact through their support of education and economic development, as well as in the arts and healthcare. And we're really honored to be part of their effort. We're grateful to Mr. Hunt, who is an alum of the Drucker School, and to the foundation also for recognizing and supporting our family business programming. So thank you. I also want to thank the partners of our institute who support us, not just financially, of course, but through their valuable technical advising and the resources they provide our members. And finally, I want to thank and welcome our institute members. This is a diverse and very vibrant group who really enrich our programming and our network. And we invite those of you who are not part of this membership group yet to join us. We have great discussions and enjoy kind of sharing ideas and resources with each other. So thank you to all those who've made this possible. I want to sort of transition from our last event a little bit. In our last session, for some of you were probably in attendance, this last session in November, we really focused on two Drucker principles. The first of them is the importance of mission and purpose, right? The question, that fundamental question of what business are we in? The second was recognizing the importance of developing people in your organization as you pursue that mission. So you will, I'm sorry, can we go back one slide, please? So you will see both of these principles also reflected in the discussion that we have today. But in this session, we're turning to a third key principle of the Drucker management philosophy, and that is demonstrating social responsibility. In the Drucker management philosophy, it's very clear that the primary purpose of any business is to create a customer, right? But what is also core to the philosophy is that how a business creates a customer matters. That no matter how a business, goes about its strategy or operations, it has a fundamental responsibility to contribute positively to society. And this idea is not, as you see on this slide in the red box, this idea is not just about creating philanthropy in your business or creating a statement around social responsibility. It's much more fundamental than that. And it's really, integrating the idea that your business is responsible for whatever and whomever it touches. So you may think of the environment, you may think of employees, you may think of the community. So on this slide, you see sort of a way to think about it. And we used a scale like this last time with the other two principles that we discussed. And I invite you to just think about where your organization sits here, right? So, on one side, you see kind of the an organization where that is not particularly focused on social responsibility at all, right? It's concerned primarily with kind of short-term financial metrics. On the other end of the spectrum, you see an organization where social responsibility is truly at the core of the organization. It's understood and believed by everyone, and it's reflected in the language and behavior and processes in that organization. So that's the other extreme, right? And then you have a big range in the middle with, sort of a 5 might be an organization where you have you've voiced some commitment to social responsibility, but it's really considered, it's kind of an add-on to what you do. It's not really seen as the essential or core to the actual mission or success of the enterprise. So with this kind of principle in mind, this Drucker principle in mind, we're bringing you today some insights about how family businesses can achieve this. And we want to encourage you to think about your own businesses and what areas resonate and with you all, what you already do and what you might want to adapt. And then that's sort of what the workshop is for, where we'll really kind of share some practical ideas, challenges that people face. So at the beginning of these sessions, it's always great to have a little like temperature taking, especially since we're online and we can't see everyone. So I'd love to just do a very short poll question where I get a sense of, when we talk about, think about where your organization, how you would answer this for your organization. When we talk about sustainability in our organization, we have, A, a very clear definition of what we mean by it. B, a vague sense of what it means, but not really any specific words or goals. C, an external definition that we refer to. Or D, we almost never talk about sustainability. So please kind of just put in where you see your organization. I'd love to get a sense of where the room is. And I think we can close voting as we get. Okay, here's what we see. Okay. Oh, very interesting. So yeah, and I mean, our anticipation is that people would really be all over the map here. And so we will dig into more, what is that, how are our definitions different, and how does that, factor, what implications does that have? Okay, second quick question that's a little bit different I'd like to ask is, how would you characterize your organization's approach to having a positive impact on society? Would you say it's proactive and very specific, meaning you have a very specific way you try to improve society? B, it's very proactive but not specific. You're sort of constantly exploring and looking for opportunities. And C, somewhat proactive. You're kind of looking around but not particularly proactive. Or D, mostly reactive, meaning we're just trying to keep up with, expectations from, political or social expectations. Okay, I think we can close the poll. Okay. Great, interesting. So yeah, so I think this is just a great starting point to kind of get you thinking, kind of get you tuned into some of the material you're about to hear. And as we go through the day, I just want to give you a quick overview. We will learn that there's many ways to talk about this. There's different ways to define sustainability. There's different pathways to impact. And so our speakers will start the session with our speakers sharing their knowledge and experience. And then we will turn in a couple of hours to a workshop session where we'll begin to apply this to your own businesses. So I'd like to now briefly introduce our 3 speakers. You'll hear the word pioneering a lot today. And we're lucky, in fact, I think, to have 2 pioneers with us. One in the practice of family business and one an academic leader who's carving a path in research that's truly unique and very valuable. So first, I'd like to welcome Cindi Bigelow, who is the president and CEO of Bigelow Tea. Some of you, we didn't have as many as we wanted, but there was an opportunity to connect with Cindi in the tea hour this morning and talk about, your favorite Bigelow tea flavors. So we want to thank Cindi for taking the time to do that with us. But as you'll hear from Cindi, Bigelow Tea is one of the truly pioneering businesses in terms of having a business focus on community. Cindi is a third generation leader of her company that was founded by her grandmother in 1945. So, and she will share with you how Bigelow's emphasis on values and community really goes hand in hand with business success. So thank you, Cindi, for being with us. Next, I want to welcome Pramodita Sharma, who is a professor and the Schlesinger-Grossman Chair of Family Business at the Grossman School of Business at the University of Vermont. She is the former editor of the Family Business Review, which is a very prestigious business journal, and she's quite decorated in the area of family business, and among other honors, received the Lifetime Influence and Impact Award at the Family Enterprise Research Conference. So she really is one of the very few experts who can bring together this tremendous academic experience with the practice of family business. And she will do this for us today as she shares her research on the role that family businesses play in sustainable business. So thank you, Dita, for being with us. And then finally, last but certainly not least, we have Vijay Sathe, who is the CS and DJ Davidson Chair and Professor of Management at the Drucker School. He has taught our MBA in MBA and executive programs all over the world and brings his expertise in strategy and organizational theory, and of course, the Drucker management perspective. And he's developed for us and has been teaching for a few years now our Drucker School MBA course in family business, and has been publishing both case studies and thought pieces in important family business publications. So thank you, Vijay, for moderating our session this morning. And with that, I think I will hand it over to Vijay.
Good morning, everyone. And thank you, Kat. And in addition to being pioneering, I've had the pleasure to work with two delightful people. Sometimes the pioneering types, end up becoming a little difficult to work with, but just the opposite. It's been a real delight to work with them to get ready for this session. And I just want to say a couple of things before we begin. One is I know that Cindi Bigelow's colleagues, some of them are joining us. So a special welcome to them. I know a colleague of Dita, Sharma, is with us, so special welcome to her as well. And one thing I want to say just in the beginning, we just saw the survey on are you clear about sustainability? It'll be really interesting to discuss this in the workshop. In developing this session and in thinking about it, we concluded that the word sustainability actually can be so confusing that you'll notice we haven't used it in the title for the presentation, because some people still, when they talk about sustainability, they really mean company sustainability, right? Which has been a meaning for a long time. But many others now use the idea of if you're not also impacting in some way the social good, then that's not really sustainability. So we'll have some little fun with that. And I think Dita goes very far in making it very, very clear in her new book that is not even out yet. So we have the privilege of seeing this beforehand, how that can be clarified. So keep that in mind as we go forward. And the third is a mechanical request. We decided that we would let Cindi and Dita each speak uninterrupted for 20 minutes. It's very, very short time. So one request is, please, you can certainly make your questions known for yourself and write them down if you like, but it will help if you don't actually start using group chat till the break. So at the end of the two sessions, we will take a short break. At that time, I will ask you to please submit your questions. And as we did last time, we are going to pay special attention to your questions. So without further ado, it's my privilege and honor, Cindi, to have you with us. And thank you so much for all that you do in the cause of business and in the cause of helping your communities. So over to Cindi.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you all for inviting me to be part of this. Vijay, I really appreciate that. And Dean Pick, just to be associated with Dita. When I first was asked, of course, the whole idea of a family business continuity as a force for good is something that's so important to me. But I remember when I got Dita's resume, I sent it to my son and I said, oh, look at this woman. This is so intimidating. Look at her resume. But at the same time, working with her, you have just been such a breath of fresh air and so easy to work with. So this has been a fun experience to get ready for. And I hope that over the next 20 minutes, I can try to share with you how I think all businesses should be focusing on that. I think, as we said earlier, organizations need to be responsible for whomever and whatever they touch. And I think that's really the right way to think. And I know for me in my position, that's how I have been really trying to operate the business for quite some time. So again, talking about a family business as a continuity force for good is something that really is near and dear to my heart. So moving forward, for the next slide. The reason why I am sharing with you this slide is because we talk about being a force for good, making sure it's part of everything you do. And I'm showing this slide to say that being a strong business, being number one, being the one that's growing the most in the industry, really trying to pioneer inside your own industry, you can be number one. You can be aggressive and do a good job as a business, whether it's service or whether it is product, and you can still be a force for good. They are one. You do not have to separate it. You do not have to have two different personalities. And to me, that's how I've really tried to operate the business. And we want to be very successful. We are very blessed to be the #1 specialty tea company in the United States of America, which is pretty interesting from a small family business, considering many of these competitors are billions of dollars in size. So we're very, very proud of it. But again, the point is to show you that it goes hand in hand, I think, with trying to make sure you're a business that's a force for good. On the next slide, which we're going to talk a little bit more about later, is, and again, I'm showing this to really give the relevance for being a company trying to do the right thing in everything that we touch. Part of that is the consumer, right? And that means we're never shortchanging anything from a quality perspective. And my team knows that, and we'll talk a little bit about that later, is really them understanding that in the case of products and consumer goods, there's so many things people do to cut the cost of goods to maintain margin. And I always say that's not something we're going to do. We're going to always use the real oil of bergamot from Calabria, Italy. And that's why our Earl Grey is the #1 in the United States of America. The green tea, we never compromise on that quality, no matter what happens from a pricing perspective. And the same thing with our lemon ginger. So we're #1 in the black tea category, #1 in the green tea, #1 in the herbal tea. And this is what makes up my universe of specialty tea. And it's because a big part of that is that we never compromise on quality. And that's very easy to do when people aren't looking. You can change a little here, change a little there. We hear about that all the time. But part of being a business that is truly ethical through and through is also making sure you're never shortchanging it. And the consumer recognizes that. On the next slide, I want to just spend a few minutes on this one. This is something that I think really sort of represents who we are as an organization. I realized years ago that, what is my purpose? How do I share my purpose with everyone in the organization? Our company is blessed to have 400 families that are part of our world. And they all do different things, right? You have some people that are shipping and accounts receivable, accounts payable. It's all over the map in terms of the wonderful positions that work here. What unifies us? What is something that is just why I do what I do. And so I worked for about 2 years to put this together, and I talked to many different people inside our organization, outside our organization. And it really, to me, it finally, and I love when I use this term, I'm in the tea business, it boiled down to just to create an environment of pride that brings out everyone's desire and ability to make a difference every day. And how that goes so much to me with what we're talking about before, recognizing the businesses are responsible for whomever and whatever it touches. That's the same thing as I'm saying here. We need to try to make a difference every day we wake up to make the world the best that we can. And from that purpose, which if you notice does not mention tea, there's nothing about that. From there, the vision falls out to harness that pride in order to deliver that uncompromising quality tea experience that really enriches life's everyday moments. Think about it. That's what a cup of tea is. It's just an everyday moment. But how do we need to take that very seriously, that we want that to be a wonderful moment for you? And then I'm going to talk a little bit more about the pillars that hold up that purpose and hold up the home, which is the business relations, the customers, the employees. What are we doing in each one of these to be the best that we can? And finally, just finishing up on the slide, talking about the values, the foundation of the Bigelow home. And when I was coming up with these values, again, talking to many people, when I would show it to outside experts, they'd be like, oh, that's too many values. You can only have 3 to 5 values. And I'd say, who said we can only have 3 to 5 values? I mean, these are the values that I might not have all of them, but I want to aspire. Not every one of us in the company might have all of these, but we need to honor and aspire. So maybe I might not be fun, but maybe the next person is, and we need to thank them for bringing that to this environment. But what's more important for me, I created these values, right? Trying to be a force for good. I have 400 people. How do I give them a voice to tell us how we're doing? So every mid-year and every year-end review, everyone in a supervisor role, leadership role, when they sit down with whoever in this organization that we're reviewing, we ask, what are 2 and 3 values that we can do better? How can we be better? And then we sit and we wait. And they can give us a chance to say, gee, you talk a lot about transparency, but your doors are closed a lot. And things like that, we then roll them all up, and twice a year, we talk about them every 6 months until the next one come in. So for me, the values are very, very important. And I hope you're going to see that as we finish this presentation, that is really runs through the fabric of who we are, is trying to have the right values. On the next slide is starting to talk about those pillars, right? How are we making sure everything we're doing the best that we can, that we're never compromising. And that happens to be the sort of the slogan that we have here: settling is not an option. So this slide here for me is very important as a family business. It's not just that I need to understand the value of quality and understand how important each and every ingredient is, that we're really seeking the best. It's also for the entire team. So this is a really fun picture that we took in December before COVID stopped all traveling, where we were literally visiting our family farmers that we buy our chamomile from. We were in the fields, we were helping harvest, we were in the facilities. And it's important because these are the sales, the marketing, the R&D members that are really, they have to understand, they need to understand why quality is so important, why we can never, ever settle. Because the Bigelow family, we're not going to be with every ingredient that's purchased and for every cup that's made, but these people all together, they will be. And it's been very exciting. And these are just some of the trips that we've gone on as teams to really make sure all of us understand that for the consumer, we can never compromise. The next slide is something that I call greening wellness in a community. And it's something we've been doing for over 15 years now, called the GWC. And it's talking about how, as an organization, how are we thinking about how much more green we can be? What do we do internally? What do we do externally to be as green as possible? What do we do from a wellness perspective for the employees, right? That's, again, part of the pillars to the left, the community and the employees. And then lastly, of course, the community as the GWC is what else can we do in the communities to give back? So this has been sort of a major centerpiece for our company for a very long time. And I'm very proud of that. And it fits into so much about the conversation we're having today. Next slide. So this just digs a little bit deeper into some of the things that we're doing from a greening perspective. And we're always challenging ourselves. How do we be more environmentally sensitive? We make 2 billion tea bags a year. We need to be very aware of this. And people sort of ask me, when did I start on this journey to try to be greener? And I said, I remember when my children were in like 3rd and 4th grade, and they were coming home and schools were talking about recycling, and they were talking about recycling. And, you know, it was a great phenomenon to have a conversation with the kids. And I started coming to the business way back then and going, what are we doing? in that arena. And that's really kind of what started this mission so many 20 plus years ago. And I'm very proud to say that we've installed solar panels. We just became certified as a Green E corporation. We just installed an electric vehicle at our Louisville plant to help sort of reduce the energy that we require during the peak hours, which helps reduce what's needed on the grid. You can go to the next slide. We're a zero waste to landfill organization, and that is a big deal, something we're extremely proud of. I remember many years back visiting a company, Burt's Bees, and watching everyone put every piece of their refuse into different containers. And I so admired that. And we came back and we said, we need to do the same thing. So every office area has a compost, a recycle, and a very small garbage can. We take things like our boxes that some of our raw materials will come in, and we give them to food banks to use. So we're constantly challenging ourselves on how do we reduce or reuse or recycle everything. Next is wellness. You know, you think about it, right? Doing the right thing. Well, that means doing the right thing for the employees. And that's a very serious thing for me. I love to always say it's more serious for me than it is sometimes for the employees. They don't like me sometimes getting in the way of having an event saying no, you know, unhealthy foods and no sodas. They sometimes get a little angry at that. But what I would try to say to them is, you know, I have so many people out of the 400 families, 300 of them are focused on keeping those tea bag machines running. Well, if they're going to put all their effort and energy into keeping those tea bags machine running, why would I not do the same thing for those people that are doing all that hard work? Why don't I not want them to be as healthy and as well as possible? So we've had all kinds of, for 20 years, different wellness seminars, et cetera. We have COVID testing on site. As you can see, this is me on the far bottom left, very painful. And, oh, you can go forward. That's great. The next slide just goes into a little more detail. And it's interesting, when I was having at the tea party earlier, with Kat and members, she said, well, you know, I think people today want to hear about COVID. And that's very much part of our wellness program. When COVID really struck all of us so quickly, the team and I went into high gear on what we needed to do. First of all, it's manufacturing. And in order to keep everybody working, right, it needed to be safe. But it also needed to be safe for another reason in my mind. And I think that's also why we try to be a force for good, because it's just the right thing to do. We didn't want employees coming here that were afraid. We wanted them to feel safe. And so we went so overboard immediately, whether it's with loose site separation, reducing the shift hour so there's cleaning in between, limiting the number of people that are in any particular room, insisting on masks, goggles, shields. And some of this was a little challenging to get the plants around the United States to really buy into, but now they are so proud of what we've done to make sure we're a safe place. And I'm very, very proud of our record. And that's really just thinking about the employees and what I would want someone to think about for me. Next is community. And that's something we've been doing for a very long time. Really started with my grandmother. She was a very community-minded person. I remember finding out many years ago that she actually adopted a town in West Virginia and used to send trucks of books and shoes and coats down to this school down there to support them. I didn't have any idea till many years of working here. And it's just part of, again, the fabric of who Bigelow Tea is. The Bigelow Tea Community Challenge is one of the centerpieces. We've raised over $2 million to give to many, many different local charities, usually smaller local charities in our community, so that money really can make a difference. But there's many people, probably 30 to 50 people in our company that work on this every single year. It takes a lot of work, but it's something we're very proud of. And we should all be thinking about what else can we do in the community. Next slide is just a series of outreach. And I'm sure everyone I'm talking to has so much to be proud of in the arena of giving back to the community. So this is just a smattering of some of the things we've done. One of them I'm really proud of, though, is we created a community garden. And every year we have, well, we didn't this summer, but we usually have about 20 interns. And the interns love this. It's their garden. And they do all the harvesting and the weeding and the watering and the planting and all the fun stuff. And we've given over 1,000 pounds of food to our local food bank in the few years that we've had this. So it's engagement, right? It's getting everybody, even the interns here, to understand we can all give back. I always say, if everyone just does 1 inch, you do move mountains together. Next. All right, and just as I come to a close, the B Corp that we just became was something I'm very, very proud of, to become a certified B. And for those that are not familiar with certified B, it basically means that you are not just in business for profit, that your shareholders, and we're a private company, but your shareholders include more about taking care of the environment, of the communities, everything that we've just been talking about. So for me, this journey to become a certified B, I think really just represented everything that we have been for a long time. We started on this journey so that I could see a roadmap. When I heard about this years ago, I said, oh, this could maybe help us be even a better organization. And I said, we don't have to become certified B, but we can go down that pathway. Well, shortly after starting that journey, I said, oh, we have to become a certified B corporation. So I'm very, very proud of the fact that we are certified B. And as I said, it's something that I think really does share with you the kind of company that we are. And then the last slide is just finishing up on the home. You know, when I show this to people, they're like, oh, this is nice. And, you know, I think you put these things on paper, and then we gave every employee one of these cute little Lucite homes. But it's not just about the creation of it. It's about living it every day. And it's about never letting it go away, and really making sure it's part of your conversation. It's not just a one-way conversation, it's a two-way conversation. So talking about your purpose, making sure that people really see that, and that are you living that purpose? And also those values for me is really letting the employees know that I value them, and that I hope that they value how much this organization cares about them holistically. So with that, again, I could not have been more honored to get to speak about something that I am so incredibly passionate about, that I do think many companies are passionate about, not just myself, but I was so pleased that they chose me to share how we live our life at Bigelow Tea. And I do hope that you'll have some questions for me. Whatever you want is fun. I love answering questions at the end when it's appropriate. But I do hope I gave you something to think about that organizations are out there, and I know there's many of us, that we're just trying to do the right thing. And I think many companies are.
Thank you, thank you, Cindi. That was inspiring. And I would just add here that one of the confusions about sustainability, to move forward, you know, is in the US, there's a high bias towards thinking about only environmental sustainability. And with Cindy's example and many family businesses, there is this emphasis on community, which really is the people part. So too many companies, I think, define in the US people as only employees. And as in this case, we see clearly going beyond that, like the rest of the world, when they talk about triple bottom line and they talk about people, they clearly mean not just employees, but the people in the community. And so it's a great experience to see all that at work. We move now to Dita Sharma's presentation, and we are privileged to be one of the first to see this because her book is not yet published. I think it's coming out in April or May. And I think it's a special honor to be able to see this beforehand. And here you'll see Dita go even further and be very specific in tying the notion of sustainability to the UN's environmental goals and human development goals. So Dita, it's a privilege to have you with us, and over to you.
Thank you, Vijay. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you, Dean Pick. And Cindi, what a thrill to be with you on this panel. Following you, I mean, my family actually thinks much higher of me because I'm presenting for the Drucker School and with Bigelow Tea's leader. So thank you for elevating me, helping me elevate myself in the eyes of my family. I'm going to share a storyline. Last few years, I've been well, this was more our students. I've been working in family business research area, grew up in a business family myself. So I've lived it from different perspectives. And the question we started to wonder was, what about sustainability? I live in Vermont. Our students are very focused on sustainability. Green mountains surround us. So the question about sustainability is around us all the time. And as we see in the next slide, this is the book I'm going to focus on. Vijay mentioned this is, it's really stories of 14 families. These are families like Bigelow. Maybe next book, we're going to focus one on Cindi and her family. This book, we really wanted to go around the world and ask a question: who are those wow companies? Who are those path-breaking companies? When you think, and when we're asking scholars and educators, when you think of sustainability, who comes to mind first of all? And so we went around to identify these companies and ended up with about 14. And each chapter in the book is a case, is a storyline from when the company was started and really their journey. As Vijay was saying and Cindi was mentioning in her remarks, it's really a journey. And the meaning of the word sustainability has changed, has evolved over time. And where are we? I was delighted to see when Kat asked about, what does sustainability mean? About 60% of you are already thinking very seriously about it, and many are proactive. So let's see what that means. So I'm going to go through a few storylines, as in the next slide. The question we were curious about is there is an opportunity. It's a huge opportunity for business families. Numbers like 12 trillion of new business opportunities are thrown around. And the companies that are adopting, as Cindi was mentioning, people, profit, planet, are really 3 Ps that love each other. So if we want more profits, we must take care of the people, we must take care of the planet, because if one of those Ps is kind of sent to a corner, go sit in a corner, we're not going to be talking with you for a while, the other 2 Ps get incomplete, and they want that. So what are businesses doing? And as in the next slide, this is a new language that we are hearing. This is a brand new language coming out. And our curiosity was, are family businesses using sustainable development goals as an anchoring point, as a language? And because this is where we're going to see the investment and opportunities as we go further. So where are we in this conversation? As we went through the 14 cases, this is what we found. So in a nutshell, we found 3 Cs and 3 Ps. And that's what I'm going to talk about with you. For the longest time, I've been a family business researcher for about 30 years, and my focus started with longevity and succession of family businesses. And whenever we thought of control, we were quite happy to think of it as a family control. But what we are finding in this research, its control lies with that one person who has, everyone knows this is the person who can make those strategic decisions, the final call, one ship, one captain. And that's the idea of the control. And I'll go through examples. For example, the Jepson and Jessen company, they are actually 2 different families who worked together to lead this business for 3 generations. So when they talk about control, they figured out a mechanism to have a federation of businesses independently controlled, but each has one captain for the ship, and all the boats, if you will, go together. Continuity. We would always think of continuity of leadership in family, continuity of the business, but in this case, it's quotes like, we've no intention of selling, so it doesn't really matter how much it's worth. it's not up for sale. So the continuity of the business, people start talking about their 7th generation, 200th anniversary celebration when they are still not 100 years old. So we see that mindset of continuity. And commitment. When we think about commitment, sometimes the language of sustainability is used, and sometimes it's just about what we are doing. When Cindi talked about, it's about a consumer, we're going to be the best tea company, bringing the most authentic ingredients to our customers. The same thing with the Rocky Mountain Soap Company, is a small company from Canada. What they say is everything that comes out of our company that you use on your skin is going to be toxin free. And for them, 98% toxin free is not toxin free. It has to be 100% pure natural ingredients. Another company, so when we start seeing the purpose clarity, we start seeing these ambitious, really lofty goals, big, hairy, audacious goals. We start seeing them by 2050. This is a Dutch company, a 3rd generation company. So similar, this is over 100 years old. And that's when they got the royal predicate from the Dutch government for being a Dutch manufacturing company, privately held in manufacturing business for over 100 years. And what their current goal is, by 2050, they want all 10 million Dutch buildings to be using the paint that comes from renewables, whether it comes from their company or another competitor. That's the education journey they're on. And professionalism and partnerships come both in internal, personal, as in family members professionalism, family and non-family member partnerships, and in the systems that are adopted. The partnerships also come in terms of who our customers and suppliers are. In many cases, we hear generations of family members who've been employed by the same family business. So there is a family business like the Bigelow, and they have multiple generations of the same family, multiple members of the same family who are employed in that company. And I can tell you some stories about local families here for whom the COVID distancing was an easy matter to deal because they already have a cluster of family members working in their business. So they could bring the same cluster in, they could bring 3 or 4 clusters in and run full swing on manufacturing. In the next slide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share examples of designers of sustainability and transformers of sustainability. Designers are young companies, the oldest is 30 years old, who are first generation, and how they are using the concept or the purpose or the 3 C's and 3 P's, how they are using to make a better business and a better world. So the example, and then I go through, and so these are the 3 examples of designers in our companies. And they haven't all started to use the Sustainable Development Goals. So in some cases, I put those goals up. They're not using this language. For example, Supreme Creation, I will share the story a little bit more. Supreme Creation is a small company from UK. Their motto, if they have a Bigelow home in their mind, they have a turtle wrapped in plastic in their mind. So their motto is, want to eliminate plastics from the oceans. That's their motto. And how they are doing it, I'll share in a bit. So they're concerned about life below water. By the way, this is a vegetarian, Indian vegetarian family who lives in London. So they don't even eat fish or anything that comes as food from underwater. They're just concerned about life underwater. Biofilter of Hungary, they're concerned about dumping of used cooking oil in their country. This is a country, when this company started 20 years ago, there was no McDonald's in Hungary. So there wasn't this concept of large restaurants or hotels coming up with dumping a lot of used cooking oil into the nature, but they could see that coming. And they went into circular economy, and I'll explain a little bit. And I already talked about the toxin-free ideas. So when we go into in the next slide, as I show, the purpose-driven companies, they're after these lofty goals, and the worries are by 2050 for the plastic challenge, there's going to be more plastic in the ocean than the fish. And that's unacceptable. So it's a lofty, lofty goal. The one on the toxin-free, this was education for me, and I became slow using skincare products on myself. They said there's 85,000 chemicals that are used in skincare products, and only a fraction of them have been tested for long-term health. And they're trying to make a dent. They're trying to make a difference in that. Then they also worry about the products. It doesn't matter if it's a tube of cream that we are using, or lip gloss or hair product. We use those products in 3 to 4 months, and then the plastic, the covering lies in landfill for over 100 years. So how does that impact? So those are the big lofty goals they're after. I'm going to go past the biofilter, because what they are really doing is they're collecting the used cooking oil and then recycling it, working with others to create biogas out of it, which goes back into their electricity grid that supplies the community. So, and they also use it for refueling or remanuring the environment, the grounds, to get more food out of the ground. So they've what we call what we are beginning to call is circular economy. There is no landfill effect, nothing in the land, nothing in the oceans that is going to be negative impact. So when we go on, let me share here the story. If we go next, you'll see this guy's picture. What we have is the one back, please. What we go back on the top right is, and the guy on the left of the top right with Prince Charles is the founder of this company. And he was the one worried about the ocean, the plastic in the oceans, and said he knew the jute industry and said, I could make jute bags. That's something I understand because jute is the raw material is in India. The family had moved from India to UK in London, but had connections in the industry in India. So closer to the raw materials, I could make jute bags. But when I do that, I want it to be professional, large manufacturing capacity. I want ethical treatment of employees and farmers, and it has to be sustainable. So got all the machinery, set up a factory in Pondicherry in India with 800 employees now, 90% of whom are women. So the idea there was to help raise the income level of a family. The one way to do that is through providing employment. And then the daughter comes along. The daughter is now educated in Oxford, and she comes along, and as all young person in her, you can see her being fashionable and all in the picture on the right. Her first task was, there was an award that Prince Charles, who's devoted to sustainability, one of his foundations had called for small business manufacturers who are making a difference in terms of sustainability, and sustainability as in ecology. And so the daughter was a gap year between college and school, and she said she was assigned the task of putting together this application. And the picture on the top right is they actually won this award. And this is a little side story, is this company actually provided a lot of jute-based paraphernalia for the wedding of Prince Charles and Camilla. So suddenly, from being an immigrant through the sustainability journey, they're finding themselves in conversation with the crop of the society in UK. And the daughter comes along. Once she joins full time, she says, but the jute-based products should become fashion statements. So she uses her network from Oxford University to go to the musicians, go to the designers, and now they are producing, they're working with over 60,000 clients. And when they said clients, Walmart is one of the clients. So these big retailers around the world, Boots is one of the clients. So they are the ones who are bringing their products further on. So as we go on the next slide, so what happened with COVID, suddenly they were already working with British Design Association, and they ended up developing these designer face masks for everyday person. And we're going on, I've been reminded about the time, so I'm going to try to take you through the transformers. Their journey is harder because they've already been in this storyline for a while. So Cindy's journey from moving into how the company started, transitioning to the sustainability, transitioning to becoming B Corp is the story of these companies. The organic growth is what Cindy has done, is slowly, suddenly we realize slowly over the time you continue to follow, but then there are others who have to struggle through it. Let me give you a couple of examples of this. So in the ones that are going slowly, they're just saying we picked an area, as it was tea in Cindy's case, we picked an area, or it was lettuce, organic product or products, produce in the case of State Garden, and we grew with our customers. Our customers started asking about sustainable packaging, organic products, and we worked with farmers to change their orientation to help grow sustainable products in their farms. And we go on to the next one. When the transition is slow, there is also a long working together phase with the senior generation. We'd never talked about this. The working together phase ranges from 20 to 40 years. So it's not the 5 to 10 year baton passing between generations. And this is the phase where a family business truly develops its competitive advantage. This is happening in organic. But what happens in the next slide? What happens when we don't manage the control well? So in this particular case, which is a Griffith Foods from Chicago, the control from generation 2 to generation 3 was dispersed. There were over 40 owners in different parts of the continent, and it took them 10 years and 15 million to consolidate that control again before they could start running in one direction with one purpose, and now they are running really, really fast. Moving on, again, in terms of control, it doesn't mean we can't have that one ship, one captain control. Companies are continuing in that mindset as we go further. I've been given the time warning, so I'm going to close here as we go to the next slide. In terms of continuity, it's beyond the current generation. Commitment is using the business as a force of good. And then purpose is now being defined by one or more of sustainable development goals. Professionalism is in systems that we use and the personal training, and partnerships with internals, which means family members, non-family members, and externals. The long working together period. I'm going to pass it back to Vijay to help us take it from here, please. Thank you, Vijay.
Thank you, Dita. In just 20 minutes, you have done an amazing job of showing the breadth and depth of what you have done. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions, so we'll be able to pursue. So at this point, as I said at the outset, we're going to take a 10-minute break, and we're very much now looking forward to all your questions. So please, during the break, put them in. We have some of our own, but we would like to see as many questions as you have now put on for the break. So I have 9:27, let's say 9:30. Let's come back at 9:40 a.m. Okay, we'll see you then at 9:40 a.m.
Thank you. Sorry, I rushed through that.
No, it was great. Dita, it was great. And Cindi, fantastic. So we'll just see what questions.
Incredible.
I know.
That makes me want to go in so much
no
more.
admittance. We just have to get ready to go on the manufacturing floor.
All right, safety first.
So-
Here we are. I have a beard net on, and we're about to go see how tea is made. Hey guys, Chris Casey here from Localish. I am so excited because it's a gloomy, rainy, cold day, and we are on our way to the Bigelow headquarters in Fairfield, Connecticut. Thanks so much to Bigelow for sponsoring this video. You know, I grew up in Connecticut, never been in the factory before.
I don't see
really
any
want to check it
questions
out.
yet.
I'm excited you can come along. Hi! Cindi?
Yes.
I'm Chris.
Chris, welcome to Bigelow. I want to show
Thanks
you
for
around.
having me. Yeah, let's check it out.
Come on. I think the story of Bigelow is kind of a unique and fun story. It was actually started by my grandmother. She was an interior designer, and the Depression hit, and she lost everything. My grandfather was in publishing. He lost his job, and they really had to start from scratch. And so she found an old colonial recipe, and she came up with this beautiful, beautiful tea that the recipe's never changed. She sent it to a group of women who drank it, and they said the next day, source of constant comment. At first, it wasn't selling at all. Who wanted this product that nobody even heard of? This was some old recipe. And so she has this experience where this shopkeeper is telling her about this customer who smells it and buys all 6 little jars. So she goes back and she thinks about it and works with my father, and together they come up with this idea of putting this whiffing jar in the case, and that's really what put us on the map.
Is this family or is this
No,
people
this is
who
all
worked here?
the people that work with my family,
wow.
so this is our extended family. And I think it just really sets a tone, even back then, that, you know, everybody was included. This is my grandmother, this is my father, this is my grandfather, right? This is our first employee, Bill Magner. To me, it's incredibly important being third generation. There's only about 3 or 4% of businesses that actually make it to the third generation, and I know that, I recognize that, and I really, really respect it. And so I take it very seriously. I like to have fun, and I like to make it a great environment. I like to push and drive, but at the same time, at no point do I ever not recognize the sort of the stewardship that I have with this business, and that's really how I look at it. I'm here to be able to maintain it for the long term, for sure. So we make 2 billion tea bags a year, and I'm really happy to say that we are zero waste to landfill, all of our facilities. That is a huge accomplishment, and we recently just got 100% renewable energy certified. So I think we're really working hard to make sure that we're taking care of the earth and that we're here for the long haul. And it's such a special little environment up here. You guys are so close because you guys work together every single day, but you also understand the importance of what you do. I mean, this is it. This is the golden egg right here. So I so hope you guys know how much we appreciate what you do.
Yeah, you know. So the big stuff comes through here, and then
Majors,
the special stuff
all the
is mixed
special
in by
parts
hand.
of our recipes.
That's cool.
We can have up to 18 different ingredients that will go in to make a Bigelow tea bag so unique and so flavorful. I mean, think about it.
Well, you can smell it coming off of
Right,
here, how good it
you
is,
can.
yeah.
Yeah, these guys do a great job.
It's really cool.
All right, thanks guys. Thanks for letting us show some of your magic. So my parents, they come in every day, and they are the only ones that make constant comment. The mix, which is what goes into the tea, the black teas. This is where my parents come and blend constant comment. Every tea bag that is consumed of constant comment, my parents still make that mix.
That's incredible.
So it's
Yeah.
pretty unique in today's age.
So they come in here, in this secret door.
With their lab coats on.
Lab coats on. I just find it so incredible that after all these years, to actually be here as the owners of the business and to be mixing at being in your 90s, that's really
Well,
something.
how about the fact that I've been here for 35 years and it was probably a little less than 10 years ago that I got the recipe finally.
Wow.
I was like, don't you think it's time that I kind of know what to do? So we're gonna go on the manufacturing floor right now. We just have to get ready to go on the manufacturing floor.
All right, safety first.
So, yep.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Okay. Okay, well, here we are. I have a beard net on, and we're about to go see how tea is made.
We're gonna watch those little tea bags get produced. So how are the machines going? I can tell.
She knows everybody's name. It's amazing.
These are the tea bags that are being produced.
That's individual tea bags there? Is this machine filling them also?
The tea comes from down there.
Oh, wow.
See that tea in here? See the window? Drops into the tea bag paper. The tea bag is formed in the center wheel.
This is the tea bag paper right here?
Yep.
That's so funny. So how many tea bags are manufactured in this facility every day?
We can produce between 2 and 3 million tea bags a day.
2 and 3 million?
A day in this facility.
And this is the smallest of your
It's
three?
our smallest facility. It takes a lot to make 2 billion.
Today's the exact day of my 23rd anniversary.
Really? Wow, happy anniversary. That's amazing.
There you go.
And
Today's the day?
23 years
We
from today.
survived 23
Yeah.
years with him.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
One of the things I like about what we do here is birthdays. You know, everybody knows everybody's birthday because when your birthday comes up, your name is up there and on the board, and everybody, hey, happy birthday, happy birthday. I mean, it's awesome, man.
That's cool.
This is going to be our last stop, and it is just showing you some of the most beautiful herbs from all around the globe.
I see that we have some pre-brewed tea right here.
Yeah, we
What is
finally
this that we're
served you a
drinking
cup,
here?
right? Yeah, so.
Is this the original? Constant Comment.
You have a constant comment, as do I. So this is my grandmother's recipe and the one that my parents still blend to this day. So cheers.
Cheers. Thank you so much.
My favorite Peter Drucker quote is an obscure one from 1954. Great leaders shape the economic conditions in which they compete. And what Drucker's fundamentally saying here is that most people think about industry and 5 forces and thinks about how it is these 5 forces impact their organization. And what Drucker's saying is, no. You can influence and shape customer behavior. You can shape competitive dynamics. You can shape industry trends by the virtue of your investments, your resources, your allocation of strategy. So what's so interesting about that is Drucker in 1954 said, it's about shaping markets and driving markets. And that philosophy actually started getting dialed up over the last 10 years, but Drucker said it back in 1954.
My favorite Drucker quote, there's so many, is build on your strengths and make your weaknesses irrelevant. Each of us can easily look as the glass half full or half empty, and Drucker actually is teaching us to build on that which is there. And second, recognize that you need to be surrounded by people who complement yourself.
One of my favorite Peter Drucker quotes is, perception is more important than analysis. We've overtrained people to think, but we haven't trained them to see. So if you can't see the reality that's right in front of you, how do you have any chance of adapting to it? The whole thrust of my work is helping people to see themselves and their relationship to their world more clearly so that they can be more effective in adapting to what presents itself.
My favorite Peter Drucker quote is, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." So much of what creates organizational effectiveness is really about people and about creating a culture in which people thrive. And it doesn't matter how much rational, analytical processing you've done about what's going to make you competitive. If you don't have the right culture to deliver the results and to inspire people, it won't matter.
My favorite Peter Drucker quote is, "Management is a practice. Careers are a practice. Who we are in the workplace is a practice. So as we have experiences, as we go out in the world, we need to constantly reflect and grow and change. What we've done, what we need to do, getting feedback from other people, and constantly learning and growing.
When I arrived here, one of the things I knew Peter Drucker had said was, if there's one thing economists and I agree on, it's that I'm no economist. And I remember thinking, well, why do I want to teach at a school where the guy brags about not, being an economist? I read his work after that, and what I realized was he didn't want to just put calculations on the board that abstracted from people and people problems. He wanted to explain how things work in the real world, and he wanted to be a very humanist kind of business professor. In that sense, I agree. I want all of my economics and finance class to work in the real world where real people live.
My favorite Drucker quote is, "The best way to predict the future is to create it." In fact, it reminds me of a quote by another person who's famous in Southern California who said, "If you can dream it, you can do it." That's, of course, Walt Disney. It resonates not only with my leadership style, but my philosophy about life. Rather than being mired in barriers and things that don't seem possible, for me, I like to imagine what it is I want to accomplish, or what the team wants to accomplish together, and then figure out a way to get there.
Welcome back, everyone. Good to see you again. I see some questions already, so maybe we begin with the questions. I'll have one for Cindi and then one for Dita. Cindi, from Larry Lippo, I think he's asking questions about how many shareholders in the company, are they all family? And then also, do you have outside directors and so on? Can you talk a little bit about the governance of the firm? Somehow you're muted.
Can't change it. There I am.
Okay.
Good. Can you hear me now? Yes. Good. Great. I hope
Okay,
it
so
doesn't
while
change.
we are figuring
Doesn't
that
change
out,
back.
let me go to Dita, and then we'll come back to Cindi. So Dita, there are questions for you from Larry Taylor, and one of them is, what are your thoughts about this award that I'm not really aware of in India? Can you see that chat?
Yeah, I saw
from Larry
that,
Taylor?
and actually I Google searched it when I saw the answer, because it's certainly it seems well
You don't
established
have
in
audio.
India. Sorry, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, I can hear you too, Cindi. So maybe Vijay, can you hear us?
Can Vijay?
I mean, it's just,
Well, I think what's important is the audience. Can the audience hear you?
because I could hear him. Someone please indicate.
Yes, we
Vijay,
can hear.
you hear us?
We can hear
Okay.
Dita and Cindy.
So yeah, I'm sorry for the first question. I don't really have an answer because I've not been involved with the Golden Peacock Awards in India. They have been around. And so I can't really say very much based on my research of them.
Okay.
Sorry.
Let me go back to Cindy then. These questions about governance.
In terms of shareholders, correct?
Yes, shareholders.
Yeah,
outside
at this
directors.
point, my parents are minority shareholders and the majority of shares in a trust. So that's luckily, my grandmother was very forward thinking in terms of understanding the company would most likely grow. I don't think she ever understood it would grow to this level. And putting things in place that would allow us to be able to pass down the organization to the next generation. So that's how we've set up at this point, which is great.
Do you have outside directors? I think Larry is asking.
Yes, we do put that together probably about 10 years ago. I really felt, and again, that was new for a family business, and I understand that it was not something that my parents really necessarily understood at the time. Now they're a major fan of our board of directors, but I just knew for me, I needed coaching. I needed to be challenged. And so I filled the board with other CEOs in order to make sure they were looking at the entire business and being able to challenge me and challenge my team in any area of the organization. So it's been actually one of the things I'm the most proud of I've done, at least in the last 10 years. It's very important for me. I recommend it highly.
Okay, so staying with you before I go to Dita, there's also a question from Larry Taylor on diversity and inclusion. Are there specific goals you have or any thoughts about that?
Well, first of all, I think it's incredibly important for the right reasons, right? And the right reasons is because you really need, it was interesting, you talked earlier about, surrounding yourself with people. I like to say surrounding yourself with people that brings out the best in you, which doesn't mean they think like you. I happen to love to be challenged. So I want a diverse thought process around me. And the only way to do that is to make sure that those that are working with you are coming from different places. So yes, we do the analytics and determine where we stand in that area. But at the same time, for me, I'm always challenging myself to say, for example, in a facility, do we have a supervisor leadership team that represents the population in which they're overseeing? So we're always asking ourselves the questions on how we can do a better job. And it's a journey. It's a journey that I'm proud of where we are today, but I also know that we can continue to get better down the road.
Okay,
Love
great.
the question.
That's great. Thank you, Cindy. So Dita, for you, there is this question from Larry Taylor on all the alphabet soup of terminology that is used in sustainability. So what are your thoughts on that?
It is an alphabet soup indeed. And the follow-up on the question is it important for family businesses to be publicly disclosing? I think it's very important already, as Cindy was mentioning with the B Corp. It kind of provides a way to assess where we are and identify areas we can be better. But the other reason it's really important is the rising generation. And here I speak from what I hear from our students, the undergraduate and MBA students, they're asking for that. If they have choices of 4 companies they could buy a product from, they go to look for the B Corp. So this is going to become more and more of a norm as the younger generation becomes more part of our economy in terms of as in spending. So the effort is useful not only for self-discipline, self-assessment, but also for relating with other companies, learning from other companies that are going on that journey. There is another amazing effort, and that's the group I've worked with. It's called the Polaris Group of Family Business Network. And there are about 4,500 members of Family Business Network. These are from around the world. And a segment of that has gone on this Polaris journey, which works very closely with the B Corp. So I think the starting point is the B Corp, but it is incredibly important.
Yeah, it is an alphabet soup. And I think part of the problem is that the ESG designation has been picked up by the investor community. Right? So when you see social responsible investing, they have the ESG. My own view is pick an alphabet, get started. That's more important than worrying about the distinctions, because they're all pointed in the same direction. Just for a change of pace, I know you both had a great conversation when we had a little dry run. So I want to ask each of you a little bit question the other, then we'll go back to the participants. So Cindi, what I remember when we first finished the dry run is looking at Dita's 3 Ps and 3 Cs, you said, this is us. I mean, this is who we are. So having reflected on that a little bit, do you have any thoughts or questions for Dita now?
No, it's nice for me though, Dita, when you were listing them out, the thing that resonated then that resonates now that really does stand out. Like obviously 1 leader, 1 ship, I get that. And that journey is, I've seen that. But the one that you said is just there's no interest in selling. Because what I keep seeing over and over in family businesses, it's for various reasons, right? Sometimes they can't get the next one who's going to run the organization. I understand all of that, but then I say, let's turn to the outside if that is the case. But I'm happy to see that you're finding more and more organizations, which has always been my mantra, everybody that works for me. And I think that's why they come work for us, because they know you're not going to sell. That's not of interest. It doesn't matter. It's the only phone call I will not take back. My kids hear me say that all the time. It's not a phone call I'm going to take back when they say, hey, I want to invest with you or whatever. So I'm happy to hear that you're saying you're seeing that, and love to have you expand on that. That is a conversation you have with family businesses.
Yeah, it's actually a bigger challenge if we think about the designers, so the younger companies that have just started, maybe 30 years old, so first to second generation, versus that are in the later generations, third, fourth, fifth, and so on. The question is a bigger challenge. So control is not a challenge. It's 1 or 2 people, they have control, they know what they are doing, but the continuity is a challenge because they do get these offers. An entrepreneur who just started this business has made something that's really interesting for the market. They do get these offers from larger companies, and that's the place they have to pause and say, do I really want to keep it as a family business, or should I be? And in many cases, the younger generation, the rising generation is much younger. So in the older companies, as in more mature companies in terms of age, that's less of a question.
Interesting.
So third, fourth, fifth, sixth, up to 9th generation, that's not even a question that's entertained, because they are after something much bigger. And every leader sees his or her tenure in the leadership as an incompletable mission. So this is not a mission that I'm going to complete, but I'm going to move move it to the next level.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. That's wonderful to hear. Thank you.
Great. I know Kat has a question. Kat?
Yeah, so I love this, our talk about the definition of sustainability. And clearly all of this content puts us in a much longer time frame, right? For what is the purpose of the business. And I'm curious if you, particularly Cindi, but also Dita, if you in your research have seen examples of where you are struggling to balance the long term and the short term of the business. And this is another kind of Drucker principle, right? Is balancing short term and long term results. And sometimes you have to make a short term trade off because you're playing the long term. And so I wonder if, Cindi, if you could talk to how you've managed that challenge when you've come across it, and Dita, maybe also what you saw in your companies.
Well, a couple points to what you said. First of all, the word sustainability and the confusion, that's a definite thing I'd like to come back to. But in terms of long-term, short-term, I make it very clear that we are here for the long term, right? So I have no problem launching a new line that might not be successful in the long term, because it's actually filling a very important need today and could be relevant today and might not be relevant in another year. So I don't look at short-term plays necessarily should be competing with long-term plays. I think the question is really, is there ever a short-term play that can hurt from a long-term perspective? That would be a much deeper, richer conversation I'd have with my team. And I would always think that the long-term would win out. My whole point is to ethically run this organization profitably for the long haul. And so I'm always challenging my team about the long haul. And where that confusion comes in is I establish my goals, which they really can't be moving around that much every year, but there's sort of 8 or 9 goals that I have. And one of them is sustainability. And it's asking each of the division leaders, the vice presidents to review their area of control and say, what do we need to look at from a sustainability perspective? And I will tell you, for the first few years, it was coming back as greening changes. And I said, no, that's important. We're doing that too. And that's over here, more in the GWC arena. But what are you doing from a sustainability? Well, how are you challenging yourself from a people, facility, equipment, all our different practices, systems? What are we doing for the long haul to be thinking about that and then working backward to make sure we're preparing for that? And I think now the executive team is much more comfortable with the word sustainability, but instantly people were going to the word greening and what are they doing immediately from a greening perspective? Yeah, interesting confusion.
Dita, did you have anything to say on that?
Yeah, I can tag on to the confusion of terminology, and this came very clearly in the paint company that I mentioned from Netherlands, because they said when it was generation 1, sustainability meant survival. So everything they had to do, just have a product that will go into the market, people are buying. When it went to generation 2 leadership, it meant our people, our employees, because at that time there wasn't a healthcare in Netherlands. There wasn't, just going through the wars, just keeping that employment going and taking care of their own employees. And generation 3, it went into the community. So not just the people who are within our sphere of organization, but also the sphere in which we live in. And generation 4, so they try to weave in one after the other. In terms of the sustainability. In terms of the long and short term, that's a really tough one. Because all of the companies that we talked to, they were very clear. If we don't survive as an organization, so if we don't pay attention to the profits part, we can dream dreams about the people and the planet. It ain't going to happen. So the strategies we found was, one is just the pace of change is slow. So the produce company, for example, was 100% conventional produce. To now they are over 20, 25 years, now they are 95% organic, but there is still a segment of conventional produce they are doing. So there is a slow change from one to the other. And in other companies, they will have a separate entity that is completely focused on the circular economy while they reduce their effort on the conventional. So different ways to manage that short and long term.
Yeah, great. So there's another question from my colleague, Bernie Jaworski, some time ago, which really talks about purpose. And he's saying that, the way he looks at it from a Drucker perspective is organizations exist to help society. That's a very broad, fundamental way to look at it. But more specifically, when you have discussions about purpose, Cindi, what does it, if someone asks provocatively, like, why does your company exist? Or who would care if it disappears? Have you had those kind of conversations? Fundamentally, why does the firm exist?
Well, that's why I worked on the Bigelow home, because that's what it really started off with. And that's one I was saying in the presentation, that I can interview and talk to lots of different people, but ultimately, after hearing and listening, I have to decide, what is my mission? What am I doing? What is it for me? What is it that gets me up in the morning and gets me so excited every day to do what I do? And that's when I was really recognizing, and it takes a long time, in my opinion, it takes a long time to really think about what the purpose, that when you finally list it out, you say, that's it. And for me, it was to create that environment where everyone's desired ability to, have this pride. We should be proud of the fact that we're trying to make a difference every day with everything we touch. It doesn't matter what it is. Everything we do, we're going to give it our best, and we're going to be really proud of all of our work. And to this day, now I look at this purpose and I go, that's it. That's my purpose. That's what drives me, is trying to make a difference and make the world better every day in my own way, right? There's so many organizations that are doing such great work. I kid around, I make a tea bag, but I'm so proud of that tea bag. I'm proud of those beautiful moments that employees and consumers can enjoy with that. And it really does represent my purpose, is that's making a difference for me.
So just to be provocative, to make it a little more fun, what if someone says to you, Cindi, that this is defined at such a high level, right? That's good. That right now you're making tea, but potentially you could diversify into any business, in the future, right?
Right. That's why my purpose doesn't say tea.
Yes. So, but this could lead to a very interesting strategic discussion. Because, as you know, there's a whole discussion about related and unrelated diversification.
Right.
And it's a longer discussion, but at a high level, you would say, in principle, there's no reason why you cannot diversify.
Well, no, that's why the purpose was very specific to not limit the capabilities of this business, right? So we have a foundation where money is given to education in the area. That's very much part and parcel with my purpose, to make a difference every day, to be proud of everything that you do, right? So the purpose had to be more general than just tea, because my purpose is more general than just tea.
Great. So Dita, as you look at your 14 companies, would you say that all are at that high level like Cindi? Or did you find some that have much more laser-like focus on a particular aspect of their business or their mission?
There are some which have very, very specific purpose line, and that language has changed. I think the SDGs is providing a language that is changing, and it's different in the different cases. For example, there is the Kemin Industries from Iowa in US. It's only a second generation company, and their purpose of their current statement of purpose, and they continue to revise this by 2042. So the timeline is made clear. The general is we're going to, a business using business for good, but then by 2042, Kemin products will be in the lives of 80% of the global population. So, and the way they are doing it is, so they're measuring in terms of, and these are little molecules, because they are making these molecules that go in the food and water that we use and drink. So that's what they are after. There are others that have the targets. So the business for good, and then they have targets about converting so many farmers into organic, sustainable farming for the product. So those are different, as we see in the different cases.
Yeah. So this is another lexicon of words, right? Because you get into the discussion of mission versus purpose. So someone would look at the 2042, right? Would say that was like man is going to land on the moon before the decade is out, right? But if you ask for the moon landing, why did we go to the moon? Right? That's a whole different question. So many people feel the why question really is more critical than the what question. So this firm of 2042, since you know them, if you ask them, why should we do that? Right? What would they say?
So the why is also very pragmatic in this particular company. By 2050, there isn't enough land on this planet to support the food needs of people.
Okay.
So those of us in this, the second generation, he is a PhD chemical food technology. And so he's a research scientist, trained as a research scientist. So those of us who have the knowledge to make food growing more efficient are morally obligated to help meet this challenge. So there's that drive beyond, and then there is the benchmarks along the way.
Many would say that that's the purpose, and the 42 is just a target, as you said, Cindy.
Yeah, and the target keeps moving, yeah.
Some more questions are coming in. I have Tim Schultz, who is asking about metrics. Do you see, Cindy, metrics that your family business uses for the 3 Ps?
Well, we do have metrics. We have a particular growth target and a particular operating income target, which I promise you is quite conservative. Every other time I've heard another company talk about their operating income target, I'm like, wait, what? So we're a very modest company from that perspective. I would say it's a relatively modest growth, but for a 75-year-old company to have that target every single year is difficult. But I think really the underlying factor that I would say is that the way my parents really built the organization, I'm sure my grandmother started it that way, is I to be careful how I use these words because it can be misconstrued, but a conservative operating income is what we expect. Certainly not below that. That would be a problem. Anything above that, we tend to give it back to the employees with an additional bonus than the bonuses they have. And I know it's a challenging word. That I don't mean to say that if you think differently than me, that you are this way. But I always say that my parents were just not people that thought a lot about money and had that sort of, that wasn't their driver. And so that's how they raised me. And I think that's a very safe way to be for the organization. I have talked to family businesses in the past, and they focus on family wealth, et cetera. That's just not how we do it at Bigelow. It's just not how we are put together. So yes, a certain increase every year of sales growth, and then a modest operating income, that's a given. We want those, we target for those. And then often we usually will actually exceed in both. So I always say to the organization, metrics are very important. We have lots of them that we follow, but I think our purpose is greater than just metrics.
Okay, that's great.
I can ditto that answer, because if I mean, we don't have that specifically stated like the way Cindy did, but that's exactly it. The profitability P is a necessity.
Absolutely.
And it's an outcome, not the driver.
Thank you. Thank you.
It just happens, you know, if you're good, if you're taking care of, you know, good products, taking care of people, concerned about the planet and doing the reinvestments, profits just continue. And that's one of the things these companies are finding out. But we want after the profits, but voila, they keep coming. So it's almost, it's not a surprise, but it's just a nice cherry on top for what they are after.
This is a true story. I was at, there's a family business that at this point didn't have any individual to run the business. So they went to the outside, which happens. But I think you've got to marry philosophies. And this particular individual, I said to them, what is your overall strategy, you know, purpose, mission for this company? And he said, we want to hit X number in sales. And I said, okay, fine. What is your overall strategy? Who do you want to be, et cetera? And this should be a fallout. And no, it wasn't. This was the ultimate goal. And I said, that can't be your ultimate goal. That's a fallout from your hopefully a different goal, right? Like you're the number one, blah, 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 blah. And that individual since left in a very short period of time from that family business. But I think you do need to align the strategies that, of course, profit is important. How can I have a business if it's not profitable? But what is enough profit? I think that's what's great. That's a great question. What is enough profit? And I thank Tim for asking that question.
Yeah, this is, you know, Drucker, if he's watching up there, would love this because he wrote about this 60 years ago, right? Which was heretical at that time. If you go back 60 years, right? Profit is not an objective. Profit is a result of doing the right things, which is, you know, very, very Drucker-like. There are some questions here from Cindy. There's one for how do you select a family for lead? How do you select leadership positions?
Well, you know, leadership for me right now is my executive team. And then we have another senior level of management called the management council. So those are our top leaders in the organization. And I will tell you that my executive team, which, you know, I run the organization we do it all as a team. I understand ultimately I make the final say, but this is a teamwork. We're all engaged, involved, and my expectation is you need to know what's happening in all areas of the business. So when I bring in a new member, because a lot of my executive team retired, they were all 10 years my senior when I joined on to the executive team, 10 to 15 years. So this is relatively a new team that I brought on. And it takes the team a while to understand what we just talked about, right? What their mission is. A lot of these individuals are incredibly talented. They came here where metrics was first. They only know metrics. Their success is by a metrics. And I'm like, okay, no. Metrics are important. I want to know what they are, but you need to understand you're here for the long haul. What are you doing from a sustainability perspective to keep this organization moving forward? So even if I do a really good job of bringing in awesome people, which I've been doing, it does take time for them to understand the DNA of who we are as an organization. And Dita, what you're describing, it takes people time to figure that out. They like it eventually, but it's very foreign to them. It's not so black and white what success looks for. And I keep saying, hey, certain growth rate, certain income, operating income, we're doing that, right? Now, what else are we doing, guys? How are we better for the employees, for the consumer, for the community, right? Local and global. And so it's very, I think, enlightening for the team, but it's also sometimes a little bit of a heavy lift. It's not necessarily always their comfort zone when they join Bigelow.
That's great. Cindi, you may want to get your teacup ready for this one from Larry Lippo. Yes, he says, what is the succession plan for Bigelow Tea if, in parentheses, God forbid, you die in a plane crash?
Well, Larry, let's first pluck that air. No, listen, that's a legitimate question. Try not to put things like that in writing there for me. But the reality of it is that my executive team sort of has what that would look like, because I don't have anybody right now that would be the next CEO. And so between the CFO and the Vice President of Sales and Marketing, the two of them would run the organization. The business would pass down to my two children. It is a dream of mine that they want to run this company, but I will tell you that they have to want to run this company. One thing I know is I've seen from family businesses, this has to be something that you really want to do because you understand the mission and it's something that you want to be part of. And so that's the short-term plan, and the longer-term plan is making sure that I have someone that understands that long-term sustainable philosophy to continue moving this organization forward.
That's great. One other question there from, I think, Larry Taylor is an interesting one about, are you a member of a group of companies like a consortium, like-minded firms, for example, all B Corp companies or anything like that?
No. I am involved with various family businesses. They're not B Corps, but I've obviously talked with other individuals that are B Corps. But for me, again, that was a roadmap. I know one of the questions was, how do you become a B Corp? I mean, to me, that was the whole interest. It's a very significant, vigorous audit that you have to go through, a series of questions that once you answer one, BJ, 4 more fall out. And then when you answer that one, another 3 fall out. And it's how you work through this very complicated maze that gives you points to determine if you're going to be able to be a B corporation. But what I liked is that no rock was left unturned. Things that I wasn't even thinking about was part of this whole, audit. So, and survey. So, yeah, I'm not in a group of other B Corps. I know other B Corps, but to me, it's something that I think every company should really at least look at. You don't have to be a B Corp, but you can start down that path and start answering those questions.
There's one from Kat about, can you share some methods by which you empower and motivate employees throughout the organization to come up with ideas? And I'll also ask Dita from her sample, but starting with you, Cindi, anything?
Well, that's a great question. And I have to be very careful. The reason, again, I came up with the home is, I can sit here and say, oh, my employees are all engaged. Oh God, they're all so happy. And I don't really know if that's the case. So this was my only chance. How do I make sure that the operator and mechanic and the team out in Boise, Idaho, Louisville, Kentucky, and right here in Fairfield, Connecticut. How do I make sure that someone's listening to them? So this was my best way of trying. My next best way is role modeling. And my next way is constantly trying to talk to the leadership team, both the management council and the vice presidents, the executive team. What else are we doing to let people know we care about them? That's so important. They spend so much of their day here. This isn't about just making a tea bag. It is about ensuring they have a really positive experience. That doesn't mean they're not going to be driven and pushed and annoyed. And sometimes, the bar gets higher, but at the same time, we do it in a thoughtful way. So I can only try. That's all I can do. I continue to try. I can do the surveys. I can do the mid-year, the final year. I can do the talking till I'm blue in the face. But ultimately, it really does boil down to the leadership throughout the organization to really carry that baton. And I think for the most part, we have these people throughout our organization. I can tell you that if I hear about individuals that don't subscribe to this philosophy, they do not last. And in a very short period of time, they will not last here. So I am very serious about that. But I can't say that every employee is as engaged as I want them to be. I hope they are. You'd have to ask them, I guess.
I think because you're so realistic, you probably get more of it than many companies who delude themselves into thinking everyone is, fully engaged. So Dita, very interesting for you to listen to you about these 14 companies.
Yeah, well, what Cindi just said, in the process of coming up with the Bigelow home, there were conversations with the employees that help. So that is one of the strategies followed, is for the employees to be heard as a purpose of a company, as the values of a company are being defined. And that's used by a number of next generation leaders. So that's one purpose. The one tactic that's used, or strategy that's used. The second is celebrations. But humans love the number, anything that ends with the number 0 or number 5. So all of the organizations have an upcoming important anniversary within the next 5 years. And that's often used as a point of pause to engage and motivate employees. So what have we done in the last 10 years? And what are we going to do in the next 5? And in that conversation, bringing in sustainability, whatever that idea may be, it could be the people, it could be the community, in a very subtle question, what are your ideas? How might we do this better? And that's how the conversation often starts, while engaging the internal community, which is the employees and family members. Another related part is, it's often the rising generation that's charged with that work. So help plan the 15th anniversary of our business. So rising generation family members get engaged with other senior existing non-family employees, and that's the team that helps plan and engage each other. So there are ideas from both family and non-family.
That's great.
I'd love to add to one thing that you just said, Dita. And I don't know how many of my executive team are listening. I hope all of them. But we have these TVs in all of our cafeterias, in our front entranceways of all our facilities. And I sound like a broken record. I'm like, okay, let's put that on there as a form of celebration. And oh, wait, they did this in Boise. Let's put that on, the screens. Let's do this in Louisville. And by the way, we just, helped put it on the screens, put it on the screens. And they're all like, oh, here she goes again with the screens. But to me, it's a way to celebrate. It's a way to share. It's a way to have engagement, right? Or put pictures of the employees that did great things. Everyone wants to see themselves on that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So thank you for sharing that, because it is so important to celebrate, but genuine celebrations. These are not made up. Oh, let's just give a cake today. So yeah, that's so true. How do we genuinely celebrate and find things to celebrate? Because there's so many. We just have to really look around and see them and then share them.
One thing I want to just say about the B Corp, since there is interest, and this is an interest of mine, just to put it, Cindy, in a broader perspective, there are some great companies that have B Corp. Patagonia is one, Natura, Brazil is another. However, you should know one of the criticisms of B Corp is there's a conflict of interest. I'm not too worried about it, but just so you know, that the certification is done by a for-profit company that is owned by the same people. So it has been criticized a little bit. I don't think it's a big flaw, but I always like to know what the criticism is. But there is another concept, just this is for the audience, so that B Corp is not the only game. There is some concerns about the B Corp. The second kind of thing available now is called the L3C, Low Profit Limited Liability Company. And this allows you to actually have those who need capital for investment purposes and who have a social objective. It's a really interesting concept because low profit means that some people can give you money at very low or no interest. But there are tiers where others would say, because of your social cause, I don't need market interest rates. I'll take market -2 or market -3, all the way up to market. So if your needs are for capital, you have the advantage of tiering up, and you have the same benefit in that you get protected from lawsuits. The third, in fact, the most interesting for large companies that are publicly held, that is now out, that I didn't know about till a month or a year ago, is called the Delaware Public Benefit Corporation. This is as legal as it gets. Okay, so just like the Delaware C Corporation is completely legal, I love this Delaware Public Benefit C Corporation because what they say is in your incorporation, you have to specify which specific social objectives you are going to target, right? So you can be very specific about that. And having done so, right, you cannot be sued. So this is more relevant when there are minority shareholders or it's a public company. But here's the last thing. There's a survey done recently by Bob Eccles at Harvard, one of the leaders in this field. He surveyed 800 publicly held companies, right, about how they responded to COVID. And here's the issue in terms of skepticism about public companies. So you may know that they have created this BRT group who have signed this declaration. There are 400 companies or 500 large Fortune 500 companies that have signed the declaration that we believe in the 3 Ps, right? But Eccles points out there is a problem with that because that was signed only by the CEOs. And his question is, why hasn't the board signed this? All of the board members, they have not signed it because when he did a survey of those who had signed this declaration of sustainability, right? And companies that had not, in terms of how they responded to COVID, in terms of taking care of their people, surprise, there is no difference. Which tells me I'm very skeptical about large public companies who talk about sustainability. There may be hearts in the right place, but when you dig into it, it's mostly greenwashing or things that obviously you would do. So my point is, for family businesses like yours, Cindy, have the chance and are making real impact because among other things, their name is on the door and they are part of their communities, which large public companies are not. I just wanted to say that because there is much more to this than just the B Corp.
Well, I really want to support that. And I'm very proud that we're a B Corp, but I actually do know of other examples that have this certification and do things that I don't believe in, right? When the margins got tough, they let go all of their senior leadership team and all their senior salespeople because, that's how they were going to become more profitable. So there's no question. That's why I'm very, very clear to state that this is who we were when we were able to get this certification. We did not change. And I do think that the consumers today, the young individuals going into business today, you have to make sure it's not lip service. It has to be part of everything from beginning to end and what you do. That's what we talked before about long-term versus short-term. I'd want to know when are those two in conflict because I don't believe that we need to do anything for the short-term that is not good for the long-term. I do not believe that is needed. Yes, you got to survive. You're absolutely right, Dita. If you don't survive, you can't make it, but you're trying to survive, so you're going to have the long-term. So I don't see a disconnect there. But yeah, it's I am a firm believer that you really have to understand what the core of an organization is. And it's not a certification over here, and it's not a road race over there. And it has to kind of be seen through every step along the journey. And that's why I say you cannot compromise. And I tell that to my team all the time. Just a simple example, they want to send something out to the employees, and I'll say, I'd like to read it first. And then I'll see something, I'll go, you realize how much it could have backfired if you didn't think about it this perspective. Not that I can see everything, but one little step like that, your culture can be damaged so quickly. And so we need to think through. I have a terminology I use here. What else does that mean? And my team now constantly is asking themselves, if I send this out, these are the words. What else does this mean? What could this be perceived of by different people inside this organization? So that what else does this mean is also helping us think for the long term.
Okay. Dita, did you have any thoughts on this particular thing? I have a question for you, actually. And
please go ahead. Please go ahead. I'm in agreement. The reason I'm not saying is I'm agreeing. If I wasn't, then I would have lots to say.
Okay, great.
And I think it's the time. I think it's the reason I got into this research because I'd focused on succession and longevity and governance of family businesses, is the question about if we've known about the earth being, or the planet being in trouble, and the society with the inequality of incomes, we've known about it for last 40, 50 years. So why are we still getting like a failing grade when we try to grade ourselves on it? And I came up with, it's because family businesses are not around the table. When those discussions happen, whether it's Paris Accord or it's not the business leaders who are running the everyday businesses that have a say in that. It's the government officials trying to figure out, and the scientists trying to figure out. And now we're going to see that, we're seeing that momentum building. Vijay, go ahead, please.
No, that's great, wonderful. So I was just saying, as an academic, you have to have controversy, right? Otherwise, it's not. So in our conversations, the only point of controversy that we didn't finish, I want to bring back as we end the show. And that was, Dita, I think your very wonderful line about one captain, one ship, right? And I believe there's a lot of wisdom to that in terms of what I see going on and the problems I see in family businesses when there's joint ownership in the same firm. Not that it cannot be done, God knows, but it is a recipe for disaster in so many cases. So the controversy came when you began to talk about the company that has a cousin consortium that we didn't touch on. And you said that they said that the way we do this and avoid the problems is we learn to check our ego and our greed at the door before we ever walked into the workplace. To which Cindi said, I would never advise anyone to do that. So this is a setup. So Dita, can you just recall what is that story and what is the consortium trying to do to stay together?
It's actually sibling partners. So they're now worried about cousin consortium. That's, when we say what keeps you up at night, it's because we're moving from sibling partners to cousin consortium, and we're dealing with how to manage that relationship. So in the sibling partners, it's easier in some ways because they're growing up in the same family. The mother and father are the same in this particular instance. And it was the younger and the older brother. The three were asked the question at the same time, and the two pointed to the same third, which is the middle brother, saying he's going to be our CEO. Because that's the talent they were seeing. They were seeing very different talents in each other because of that. So as we go into the future, it's going to take effort. It's going to take effort to find, it's going to take discipline to find that one person for the one ship. And the way consortiums are dealing with it is making it very clear what the rules of entry and exit are going to be. In some cases, it's you've got to work outside for 5 years, 10 years. You've got to be qualified in what we are trying to do in the business for tomorrow. And then you've got to apply and be selected by an independent jury. So those are the kinds of things that are being used. Difficult decisions, but then business is seen as a business an entity they want to sustain across generations.
So Cindi, what was your concern, and have you changed your mind?
No, it's not that I would not say you don't. I'm a big fan of leave your greed and ego out the door. That's for sure. I just know that it's very difficult. I think when you get the family emotion in there, I think that's such an inspirational story that the two brothers look to the center brother and go, he's the guy. I have not seen that very often. And I think what Dita's saying that is so important is that means you've got to start early and often on honest conversation, genuine, transparent conversation about what it takes to lead the organization, who has what skill sets. I think a lot of people are very, very uncomfortable saying to people, I know this is my own organization, like saying to somebody, you know, I really need you to step up. I'm not seeing that sort of initiative from you that's necessary. Like they beat around the bush, right? Well, that's not fair to that person, right? Because all of a sudden when you're saying, you know what, you're really not been doing what you need to be doing, they said, well, wait a minute, I thought I was doing okay. I got meets, you know, whatever expectation. So people all need to start early on that conversation that Dita's talking about what is needed, what are your skill sets, what are areas you need to work on. And I think if you have that in a thoughtful way, please, in a thoughtful way, that helps identify what is that leadership and what it needs to be. Because just because, let's just say, Dita, you work outside for 5 years, that doesn't mean you can be the CEO, right? So,
No.
right. So it's talking about what are the skill sets that we agree a CEO needs, right? What is working? What isn't? What are you strong at? What are you not? And I think expectation early on has to be set.
Well, yeah, I can add just a little quickie on this one. It's with the company with Jepson and Jessen, where they have one principal shareholder. This is a cousin consortium on both families. You know, we talk about skin in the game. That skin in the game is like half your body in the game. To buy the shares, to be part of that, to become that principal shareholder for your family, all other minority shareholders have to vote for you. And then it takes 15 to 20 years to become that principal shareholder working full time. So it's a major investment of a person. It's not just, I'm going to fly by this and become a principal shareholder. And that deters many who don't want to be invested that much, and also brings up, so there is a self-selection to that kind of commitment for the family and for the business.
Yeah, I'm sure you see it all the time, Dita, and I know our time is up, but you see it all the time. Some people have the expectation that I have a name or I have a whatever, and therefore there's an expectation that, you know, financially I will be part of this. And that's fine if that works for your family company. But if that's something that you're saying, really, you've got to be more engaged, there needs to be more than that. That's the stuff we got to start early and often on having those conversations.
What I see common in both of you, what you're saying is, and I've seen this in one family business going from 4th to 5th generation, is fair process. Not only standards for selection, but fair process. So what they did is, who wants to be CEO? They asked among the 25 family members. 8 people said they would. Each of them was given a chance to pitch, and finally one of them was selected, and it had the unanimous support of the other 7. It took 4 years. But I think a fair process that is transparent, that has got clear objectives, you know, is a long way to go. But we are out of time. We could go on another 2 hours, but I can't thank you enough on behalf of the school, on behalf of the Institute, before I give it back to Kat to say her thank you to you both. So Kat.
Yeah, that was wonderful. Cindi and Dita, that just was tremendous in terms of the philosophy that you shared, but also like the brass tacks. How do we actually, you know, remembering that we're working with people and that this has to work on a daily basis, what does that look like? So thank you for so generously giving us your time and engaging with these questions. I thought there were wonderful questions from the audience. So
thank you. Yes.
Yes, that was really important. And thank you, Vijay, for bringing it all together. And so now what we're going to do, I'm going to give some instructions because we're going to break from the speaker session right now. So say goodbye to Cindi and Dita. And we're going to log out of this session. And when you come back for the workshop, you're going to have to go to the link that's on the landing page for this event, right? So there was the tea time, the main session, and then there's the workshop link. So enter out of, exit out of this one. And then when you come back at 10:40, click on the workshop link and we will go from there into our workshop groups. Okay, so we'll see you all in 10 minutes at 10:40.
Thank you. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you, Cindy and Dita.
Thanks, guys. It was
Vijay.
awesome. It
Bye,
was so,
everyone.
Dita, so fun. Vijay, Dita, so fun working with you. Really great. Really